Hello, we're so glad to see you, and we welcome you to our 5th episode of Morrison Memories. We've missed you. We've been away for a while, but now we're back. And today we have a special guest, which, of course, all of our guests are special, but it's Rick McSwain. A lot of you know Rick, and some may not, but maybe by the time we do this interview, you will know him because he's very important to our city and our town, the way it grew and the things that have happened. We just are very appreciative to him. He owned the bank and worked at the bank for many years. And so today we just want him to talk about things that he remembers from when he was a boy or when he first came to Morrison. And he just has a wealth of information, and we're going to find out some more things about him. So, Rick, How did you come to Morrison? What made y'all come to Morrison?
I was telling Jan this story. My dad was in the car business, and in Pond Creek, Oklahoma, and that's where we were living. And he always drove down 64 Highway on his way to Arkansas to buy cars. He bought a lot of cars in Arkansas and brought them back and sold them. And so he drove by this place for sale at Leela. And he had driven by it many, many times, and there was a for sale sign out. So he just went and told my mom that he was going to buy it, and we were moving. And that's what happened. In 1955, we moved to Morrison. Morrison has changed tremendously. At that time, we didn't have a septic system. Everybody was on outhouses or septic tanks.
Septic, yeah.
The water was terrible, and for years trying to help develop it and get it going with more water was a tough situation.
Because it was on well water, right?
And I remember the old windmill that was out here in the road.
Right, yeah, up here.
Right here between, and they tell me they used to water the cattle there.
Yeah.
And then you remember when there was a set of corrals down here on the railroad where you could load cattle and ship them out by rail. And the Gilberts always used that. The Gilbert family always used that to sell cattle up north, or I don't know where they shipped them to, probably Wichita or someplace like that. But we've seen a lot of change since that period of time. Jan and I used to drive when we go to Colorado. We'd go up through western Oklahoma, and there's a little town just across the Kansas line, and it was rows of trees up and down the highway. And it was probably the prettiest little town that I've ever been in. They had all kinds of trees, and so that gave us the idea of going up and down the highway. And we got grants from the forestry department at Oklahoma City, or state of Oklahoma. Jan would write grants, and that's how we came to start planting the trees up and down the highway. And Mark Bays was head of the forestry department at that time, and we got to know him pretty well. And that's when we put got the arboretum. You remember Mr. Van had his horses down there, and it was pretty much a weed plot. But the horses made it all right. He fed them down there, and
it was just kind of a wasteland, wasn't it?
And then where the football field is, there was 32 acres there. Mr. Van was the superintendent at that time, and the Testermans were in the middle of a divorce. And so the wife got the land, the 32 acres, and she wanted to sell it. And that's how the city acquired it. And then we turned around and sold part of it to the school to build the grade school. And that's how that came about in the baseball fields. Harlan Wells built the apartments down here, and they're pretty nice apartments. And then we built the addition around there. Garland probably built 100 homes, Garland LaFollette. We owe him.
Oh, the new addition.
What we call the new addition. Jan and I and the kids moved here in 73. Came back after I was in the service for 3 years, and we got married and moved to Morrison. And I was working at a bank in Oklahoma City at the time, and Reimer called me on the phone, wanted to know if I'd come back to Morrison. And I started in the bank when I was 18 years old. I couldn't sign a legal document. because I wasn't 21.
Oh, yeah.
So my dad had to sign off majority rights so I could sign legal contracts at the bank.
Huh.
And we went to court and got that taken care of. A lot of things, we've seen a lot of things happen. The Methodist Church built a church, Christian Church built a different church. The Baptist Church, I guess, went out to Hilltop. Originally it was Baptist. So those three churches are all new in the last 40 years.
Yeah, or 50.
40 or 50 years, yeah. I lose track of time.
I do too.
But that was the gist of a lot of things. The little country and all of that wouldn't have been built if we hadn't had the housing. The housing was the main thing, and that's what caused Metapark to be built. Metapark, we were at 55 average daily attendance in school, high school, and if we dropped below that, they could have shut us down and annexed us to Stillwater or wherever. Dwight Reimer and John Chapman bought that, started building the houses there in Metapark, and that helps save our school. We wouldn't have that school today if it hadn't been for that. And there's about 100 homes at Metapark, and there's about 100 homes here in Morrison that's been built since 1973.
Yeah.
So that's a bunch.
Well, we were on the subject of things that you and Jan did. I know it was a lot of it was Jan's dreams. Of course, she's not here, but we had a baseball tournament out here last weekend, and there were so many people from Pawnee, Stillwater, Cushing, I don't know, and there were 3 or 4 different age tournaments. Anyway, it was a huge tournament, and it lasted for 2 days, and we were sitting over by the playground. It was so neat to hear the kids over on the playground playing and screaming and singing and just having the best time. And I just couldn't help but watch them. And I said, this just makes my heart happy that in between these kids have got somewhere to go and play, and it's just all great big affair. And it was really neat. And
when the kids are up to bat and they have one of those steel bats or whatever, aluminum, whatever they are, I can hear them when they hit it at our house.
Oh, well, you probably heard Break hit one, I bet. It's just neat. And the kids playing basketball out there on the ball, and the people walking around the Arboretum. I'm just so thankful that y'all had the insight and be able to get that going for us, because it's
the key's got to be, though, is who's going to take care of it in the next 20 years.
I know it. I know. I thought about that.
Well,
yeah. They got it.
There'll probably be some funds given to the tree board that can help keep that going.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. What about I know you told this story the other day about the train. Something about the train when we were talking up this shop the other day about riding.
Doodle bug.
Yeah.
See, I could get on at Leela for $0.25. They'd stop at Leela. If somebody was going to ride the train to Morrison, and then went on to Perry. And from Perry, I don't know which way it went.
Yeah.
But anyway, for $0.25, you could ride to town. You get off right out here. The train station was down here on the tracks.
Right, yeah.
What was the guy's name that was the conductor or whatever it was, worked for them? He was a train master. He'd stop them or start them or whatever you did. I remember him. Newt the Toot. We called him Newt the Toot. Newton was his last name.
Yeah, there was a Newton I remember reading about.
And that he lived where Mrs. Seba's house was, where Eddie Polly lives now. That's where he lived at that time.
Yeah, I remember Ivana talking about riding to see her grandma or something in Perry. She'd ride over, and so I think it was used as a passenger train, I guess. Do you remember anything about school when you went to start Morrison?
When we came here, the old school was still there, and they were remodeling it at that time. Now, that would have been 1955. Then they voted the bond issue to build and then the Lions Club built the swimming pool. And it cost $25,000 when we built the swimming pool, and it cost about $300,000 today.
Yeah.
Even the same size pool that we got. They had a slide in case of a fire or whatever. If you were on the second floor, they had a door in the wall, and they had a slide that went down the backside of the gym, and the school at that time. So you get on the second floor, kick that door open, and slide down the slide.
Down. Oh my goodness! I
In
never.
case of a fire, we used to take the girls up on top so we could kiss them, and then slide down the slide.
Slide down. Well, I heard someone else said something about sliding down something, and I didn't understand what they were.
It was just a big old metal slide that went all the way down from the second floor down to the ground.
Yeah.
That may have been the way they got the cow up there somewhere. Him and Austin, somebody put a cow up on top of the school, grade school, at night after it was built.
Yeah.
You know where
A lot of us.
the sandstone rock came from that built
No.
this building and the bank building and the Cheever building, all of Main Street? Where do you think it come from?
I don't know.
You'd think Pawnee, because Pawnee's got a lot. Where Clark Schaus lives north of town, there was a quarry across the road from where his house is. Now that's what Steve Cheever told me.
Oh yeah.
Because I asked him point blank one day if he knew where the sandstone came from. He said, yeah, it came from that quarry right across from where.
Well, it must have been big.
Yeah, it had to be.
Had a lot of buildings.
All that rock.
Yeah.
We need to hang on to these buildings.
Yeah.
The way I started in the bank, I walked in one day. I'd made up my mind I wanted to be an auctioneer. Got flunked out of school down at OSU because old Larry Seeliger and I went and played pool every morning. So my dad gave me 2 ultimatums. He said, you can go get you a job or you can go get in the Army, one or the other. So I came to Morrison because I wanted to borrow $250 to go to auctioneer school in St. Louis. Yeah, it was St. Louis. And Reimer looked at me and he said, well, I don't want to loan you $250. My dad was an auctioneer, and he came home every night and had to drink olive oil to help his throat, to keep his throat from hurting, because he might have an auction the next day. You don't want to be an auctioneer, but would you be interested in coming to work in the bank?
Now.
So I went to work in the bank and started at $1.25 an hour, made $50 a week. We could live just as good then on $50 a week as now it takes $2,000 a week or $1,000 a week.
So was your dad happy that you got a job at the bank?
Yeah. So I worked till I got drafted. I got drafted in 1966, when Vietnam was going on. And I could have went in the National Guard, but I decided I didn't want to spend 4 years of my weekends in the National Guard, so I just let them draft me. And I went from here to first time I'd ever been on a commercial airline, first time I'd ever been on a commercial train, rode the bus in a commercial bus. I rode the bus from Perry. Bobby Parla and I both got drafted at the same time, and we rode the bus from Perry to Oklahoma City, where the induction center was. And there was about 20 people from Perry and Morrison, but I think Parla and I were the first draftees from Morrison in the Vietnam War. And I never had to go to Vietnam. And I spent 3 years, 2 years of it in Germany, and a year of it in training. You had to go to boot camp and then AIT. Then I was stationed at Fort Sill for 6 months, and I applied for officer candidate school, and I got orders to air traffic control school. And you'd be an air traffic controller like down in Oklahoma City or somewhere in Vietnam. And so I waived that to go to OCS, and I went to infantry OCS, and there were 153 guys in our platoon or battalion. And out of those 153 guys, 6 of us went to Germany. 2 of them went somewhere else, and the rest of them went to Vietnam.
Ooh. So you were lucky.
I skipped Vietnam, and then I made first lieutenant in 13 months. And then they called me into brigade headquarters and wanted to know, said, we want to promote you to captain. And I said, well, if you promote me to captain, will you send me to Vietnam? And he said, yes, sir, we will. And I said, I'm not extending.
Yeah.
So I went down to Fidelity. We knew some people, Dwight knew some people there. And I told him I was going to try to get on at Fidelity since I was going to school. So he pulled some strings and they hired me. and I went in as assistant cashier at their express bank. A lot of those people you see on TV that die, well, some of them I knew, and like the lady that had to sit down in Oklahoma City. Clara Looper, she banked with us. But anyway, we had a lot of experience there. And then we came back up here in 1973. I told Dwight, I said, he called me and wanted to know if I'd come back and go to work. And I said, well, what's it going to pay? And he said, well, I'm going to pay you, start you at what you're making now. And that was quite a bit more. I think it was like $700 a month instead of $125 a month or whatever it was, $200 a month. That's when we moved up here. And David was about 6 months old, I think, at the time. And Kim started to school here in the first grade. And at that time, we were so poor you couldn't believe it. We used to go down to the hawk shop and hawk something on Saturday morning so we could buy groceries.
And then fish it out the next week, yeah.
Because payday wasn't until the next week or whatever. Hard to make it through the end of the month.
Oh, the barbecues.
Yeah, we got
boy.
the first community barbecue. I didn't start it, but Dwight and some of the Lions, I think the Lions Club actually started.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but the original was out at Polly's house.
Yeah, Calvin Polly.
Calvin Polly, and they'd dig a ditch and roast up
They'd dig a hole and roast a
pig,
hog.
a cow, whatever they did, yeah.
And then they had beef in there too, and they had it all wrapped in a cloth. And put it down in the hole and put the dirt on top of it. And then when it was done, 8 hours later, they'd bring it back up. It was about the best you ever ate in your life.
Yeah, and I think it originally started for the end of harvest celebration or something.
Well,
and we celebrated.
Big time.
Big time.
Well, the stag party was men only. And the politicians came, and Dwight invited the politicians, and I remember that. So when they moved it up here, one time somebody asked Dwight how he got the beer served. Well, the deacons of the church were serving the beer. And we were feeding the highway patrol in the back part of the bank. It was any kind of gambling that they could do. We had blackjack, and we had, I can't remember who it was. They ran an over and under table.
Billy
They called it over and under.
Bigger than that.
And all you did was you rolled the dice, and if it was over 5 and you were on the over, well, you won. If you were on the under, you lost.
Huh.
Just like betting on the score of the football games, more or less, you know. We had the whole deal set up, and we never had an incident. One night, at one of them, an old kid grabbed some money and jumped through the window.
Oh, my.
Raymond Henry and the Highway Patrol had him stopped before he got 10 foot.
But talk about, they also served mountain oysters.
Yeah, we would go through at least 1,000 pounds of mountain oysters.
All you could eat.
It wasn't the year they flew the helicopters in. We had 3 helicopters from Oklahoma City brought the oil barons in. One of the stag parties, we had invited the bank examiners. This bank examiner was going home in between here and Perry. Highway Patrol stopped him because he was speeding. The Highway Patrol said, you need to slow it down, and pulled his badge out from the FDIC, and he said, I work for the FDIC. And the Highway Patrol said, I work for the Oklahoma Highway Patrol, and you're going to jail. Well, it would have cost him his job if it got out. So 2 o'clock in the morning, Dwight calls the judge over at Perry.
Oh, gosh.
And asked the judge if he would turn him loose. We'd pay the fine if there was a fine involved. And he wiped the slate clean on that old guy.
Wow.
And he kept his job. But anyway, that was the only incident that I can remember we ever had. We had 3 bars in the bank serving hard liquor, and we had the beer down at the community building. But it was a lot of fun.
So as a whole, your life, are you glad you moved to Morrison?
Yes, we are. Family-wise, we've been very fortunate, very lucky. And Jan tells me every day that we need to be thankful that we live in Morrison, Oklahoma. But I have the best kids. I don't have any problems. You know, a lot of families have drug problems. And a lot of families have other problems. But
So
we
you-
have 2 good dogs, and we have
That's the best, yeah.
2 good kids and 4 good grandkids.
That life doesn't get better than that, does it?
Well, when I leave this world, I want to leave Morrison just the way it is now, or better. And that's one of my goals, and one of Jan's goals is to have helped the community. We hope we have.
Well,
I think we have.
you certainly have, and we certainly appreciate you. And I don't know if you hear that often enough, but we really
We do.
We do. Good. It's a good deal. So I guess that concludes our episode of Morrison Memories for today. And we want to thank Rick for coming up and visiting with us, and we just gained a wealth of knowledge from him. So I guess I'll sign out now. So happy trails.